So now we're going to shift gears just a little bit. We have our next distinguished speaker. And this individual is not a keynote speaker, but instead is going to be leading us through an engaged liberatory conversation. But we're so honored to have this individual with us. And I do want to share just some highlights from this individual's bio so you can know more about who this person is before I pass the mic to him. This is Marcus Walton. He is the president and CEO of GEO, Grantmakers of Effective Organizations. He has more than a decade of practice in nonprofit management in the ontological learning model, and he specializes in operationalizing conceptual frameworks, racial equity facilitation and training, leadership and management strategy, stakeholder engagement, program development, and navigating philanthropy. We actually sent Marcus's bio out before this, and so I won't read through his entire bio, but I will tell you, Michael and myself had an opportunity to meet with Marcus prior to this graduation, to spend an afternoon engaging and having a conversation with him. And the conversation was so uplifting, so powerful. There were so many points of catalyst and catharsis and convergence that we just said, you know what, we have to bring more people into this experience and into this fold. And so that is what we hope to have curated for you this afternoon and this evening. So I now pass it off to my colleague and the distinguished Marcus Walton.
Goodness, thank you. Oh my gosh. Wow. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Michael. Thank you and congratulations to all of the classes out there. I'm just so hyped right now. I am so hyped right now. From Courtney, Robbie, I mean, I go back all the way back to Dean opening up with a few words of context. I mean, this was just a dynamic experience so far. And there was a couple of things that I wrote as notes because as Brian said, I want to make sure that first, this is the most meaningful use of your time, right? The energy is high, the love is palpable. And so I'm going to request a couple of things. I'll model some things and then I'll talk about what we just experienced together. And then we'll have a conversation and I'm going to invite the voices of all of these brilliant people into the space and have a little Q&A. So Brian, if you will, or team, if you could get us to the gallery mode again, where we're just that big mosaic of beautiful faces across the screen. The thing I don't want this to be is centered inappropriately on me. I am here as a guest. I'm so humbled and such a peer in ongoing learning with you, but has a particular point of view about leadership and a particular set of insights and observations that might be useful for you as you think about your experience today, leading up to today, and what it means going forward, right? In other words, all that stuff you heard in the bio, I want to support your efforts to put into practice the things that you have learned and hold dear to your heart right now as values and a vision for change, because I also understand this group to be about leading change. And it's not hard to see at all or imagine based upon what I've experienced so far, how each of you is destined for a particular kind of success. I want to frame that for you in a larger context, but do all of this out of just sheer gratitude. And so first and foremost, I took some notes here. You'll see me referring back to these notes, but this is from all of your speeches because it was just so fascinating. And it's such a profound experience for me that I practically threw out anything that I thought I might be saying coming into this. And you compelled me to show up in the fullest expression of vulnerability and openness that I possibly could be as an offering to this group to advance the vision that has brought you all here today. And so my request is that you receive this offering humbly as my best and highest expression of gratitude, and that you take advantage of this opportunity to allow your voice to be heard, to ask questions of someone who is out on the battlefield in real time, leading change within multiple sectors, who has spent the majority of the past 10 years training organizations in racial equity when many organizations were still wondering why it was relevant, right? It was only 2 years ago, because of some extreme racial atrocities that were globally witnessed, that we started to see an awakening and an opening in terms of a receptivity to this kind of conversation around equity, when so many people have come before us pushing this same cause. And so what I offer to you is that you are a part of something that is tremendously large. And I recall from Nadine earlier referring to threads, connecting the threads for the whole, right? This is the moment that I'm offering for you. And again, I come as no expert, just someone who has been in the field, who remains on the field, who has a set of observations and lessons that I want you to be able to learn from, so you don't have to repeat them unnecessarily and continue to make the same mistakes over and over that some of us before you have made. And so let me just start there. I just happen to be seeing Courtney on my screen. And so Courtney, I'm going to honor you because honor is one of the themes from 2022 that has made it through my process of reflection that happens at the end of every year in December and carries forward into how I think about what's important, that supports the vision that I have for thriving for myself. And so first and foremost, what I'm modeling for you is that there's something that's important as a part of your process, from my experience, that will support the actualization of the things that are driving your efforts, right? There's something that compelled you to pursue this fellowship in the first place. Is there anyone that wasn't compelled to pursue the fellowship? Right? It's something that brought you here, right? I want to introduce a concept to you that may not be new, because it seems like you learned so many of the most amazing concepts connected to our work through the fellowship that I'm a little envious and wish I could peek into the curriculum a little bit. But if I repeat anything, I just invite you to consider that as affirmation, as underscore, right? As like proof that perhaps what they introduce actually does have some relevance outside in the real world. But this idea that I'm referring to is an aspirational vision for life, right? One of the things I observed, one of the things I practiced over the past 15 years, I use 15 years because in 2005, I had my first opportunity to serve as an officer inside of a foundation. It was the first of two opportunities that I would have throughout my career. But prior to 2005, I was in the hybrid section of the Bronx, community organizer, knocking on doors, spending the weekends with families, in the projects. I mean, it was real, right? And there was no better education and experience that I can point to than those 4 years with those people who really taught me what community was really about, right? And so when I talk about an aspirational vision for life, I'm talking about, what is that vision? What is the thing that you want to see? What is this set of experience that you want to encounter as a result of your efforts for change now? Because what I see in the world right now, and especially positioned as a CEO, I have 30 employees as a part of our organizations. We have 500 organizational members and 6,000 individual members of those 500 organizations. That's a lot of people, one of the largest entities in the sector. But what I'm seeing is there's a push for change that's moving through our organizations. Perhaps some of you are employees that are making that kind of push, and others of you may be receiving the push, feeling the intensity of the push from your teams within your organizations. But my experience is that we're not exactly sure what it is that we want to change or what it is that we're contributing that push toward, right? It's a direction, but we haven't spent the time to crystallize a vision for shared thriving, an aspirational vision for life. And so first and foremost, when we think about change, my experience suggests that change starts with self. That before I think about an external shift, it serves me best to consider how I might change. What do I need to do? How do I need to be in order to realize and experience life in that way that matches that highest aspirational picture? Right? I'm talking about Howard Thurman wisdom right here. Any of you know Howard Thurman? Right? Wherever you are thinking about the thing, that the change that you want to see in the world, right? Go back to the thing that activates you and do it. What makes you hyped, right? Robbie was talking about that, right? I'm also practicing what Courtney was talking about in terms of ancestors. I've heard several of you talk about emotions in this call. Let me tell you, we are operating, and y'all know this, but I'm making explicit what may be operating implicitly in our spaces, what may be shaping our behavior in unconscious ways. This is one of the things that leaders do, right? Leaders are different than managers. Managers lead in the known spaces. They focus on efficiency, reliable, replicable results. Leaders operate in the unknown. So I'm taking us into unknown territory. That's a distinction for you, right? That's also what leaders do. Make distinctions. Because when we make distinctions, we appreciate the nuance and complexity that is always present in the situations that we are part of, right? And once we name those things that we're a part of, we can respond to them with honor. Remember, I just talked about honor. Boom. We lack honor in society is what I offer to you. We don't have a level of divisiveness, in my opinion, Marcus's humble opinion, that was never there before. We're now starting to make distinctions in ways that we didn't have the same space to make collectively. And now the nuances are able to be addressed by different people. Different voices are invited to the table to respond to the big picture within which we may be operating. It's a shared vision for thriving that we have an opportunity to solidify, to crystallize together now, folks, in a way that has never happened in the life cycle of this society. So it's a special moment. That's one of the reasons I'm really excited. And everyone's voices responded to that. But let me go back to what I mentioned about ancestors and emotions. Once, opening up with Let It Shine. Oh my goodness. I almost couldn't keep my composure, because what you don't know, one is that Fannie Lou Hamer is a heroine of mine. I just love, respect, honor her. Her words always resonate and guide me, whether it's consciously or unconsciously. But my grandmother sang that song throughout my adolescent years. I love and miss her to this day. She lived until she was more than 90 years old. She raised a family of 11 boys and girls, right? I had 11 aunts and uncles on my grandmother's side of the family, her children, my community, the community that developed, loved, cherished me, who helped me dream what's possible for life. Helped me dream what's possible for life. Within a context of inequity, oppression, marginalization, and exploitation, i.e. Western culture, right? And so we're going there. What I'm saying is we operate inside of a structure of inequity that has socialized us to diminish and defer our power. Your personal power, which is why it's also important to start with self when you want to talk about change. Because your self-awareness is the key to your transformation. Whew. So now that emotion that we're talking about, now I hope you feel what I'm sharing with you, because as an offering of vulnerability, I'm imploring for you to open the parts of yourself up that you have been afraid to open before, because therein lies the power that we all need to access to realize the promise of our aspirational vision for life. For some of us, it's trauma. For some of us, it's unnamed harm that we've experienced at some point in life before now and have not acknowledged since the point in time where we were able to survive through. We made it through. Woo! Let me say thank you for making it through, and we need you here whole. You need to be here whole because you're more than just a survivor. One of the beautiful things about this space, one of the beautiful things about listening to each of your speeches is that I was reminded, and here's one of my notes, that the ancestors across the full diaspora of the cultures represented in this space right now have already instructed us through the wisdom, practices, and rituals of the various cultures we come from, our cultural heritages, to know thyself, to know who you are as human beings, and remember that we are all interconnected. Every culture says that except Western culture that says, that reinforces competition, that reinforces independence, operating independently, that reinforces isolation and separation, that reinforces a hierarchy of human value based upon appearance, a caste system between human beings that is not real, but is based upon a construct of social and political value. We are all bigger than that, and this country suffers as a result of the bar being set so low that it's enough for the beneficiaries of the caste system in place to simply feel like they are better off than the worst of those who are marginalized. That's why this country is in the situation that it is. It is a reckoning, but we won't fully realize this reckoning, just Marcus's opinion. We won't fully realize this reckoning until we move through the process of awakening that we collectively experienced 2 years ago. Okay, so when we talk about let it shine, when Fannie Lou Hamer and my grandmother and the many grandmothers out there who have buried children because of polio blankets, because of lynching, because of land grabs, because of lead poison, because of drug transactions, because of overdoses of all types across all cultures, whether we refer to the modern opioid version or the earliest opioid dens that flooded the ghettos and sections of the earliest New York City that we can refer to. Too much suffering has occurred at the hands of us not living into our fullest aspirational vision for life. Leadership is required to fulfill that vision. We will never manage ourselves into and through transformation. Leadership is required to do that. You've been empowered. You've been equipped with the tools to move us closer to the fulfillment of that aspirational vision. I'm going to offer a couple of more things and then invite a conversation with my colleagues, Brian and Michael, open it up for some questions. Hopefully you appreciate now what I mean by let's have a real conversation so we can make this the most meaningful use of your time. Hopefully you're allowing yourself to be shaped by the experiences that you want to change. Leaders are empowered with the competency, with what it takes to respond to the moments as they are. But we have to first accept them. We cannot change what we don't first accept or acknowledge to be true. Otherwise, we are in denial. And for too long, we've been in denial for so many reasons. But now we have an opportunity to at least eliminate the discord that we're responsible for. To address with courage, with support from each other, which is why we can't do it alone. support, encouragement from each other to tackle some of these issues that we need, that require healing. The trauma that I referred to. Because some of that trauma we're experiencing, some of these tears that I'm crying don't belong to me. They belong to the people with whom I'm interconnected, and I made myself a vessel to bring that forward into my expression of leadership because I know who I am, and I continue to do the work of lifelong learning to become more aware as I'm shaped by experience in each moment. And so let me leave you with a few words here before we get into the Q&A. 3 thoughts that just when I really thought about it, captured advice that I wish I'd had, insight that I wish I had at the earliest stages of my own efforts to guide me. And then I'm going to leave you with what I refer to as the 5 C's of leadership. So 3 themes and then the 5 C's of leadership. First theme is being a learning leader. And I wish I was present with you all so much in person, because it's just, I mean, if you think this is powerful, imagine us all in a circle, huddled up, breathing the same air in real time and being able to feel the energy that is contained within the group of us. But I trust that you can feel, even through this digital platform, that you can get a sense of the power in there. Being a learning leader is that first thing. Pat talked about we're in need of leadership, Pat Swan. And I hope I gave a little bit. I want to shout you out for that, Pat. You didn't see my notes in advance, but I wanted to underscore the importance of leadership now because of what I mentioned about management and how so much has been invested into management over generations of business development in this country. But leadership operates outside of that. It can operate in tandem with it, but focusing on efficiency isn't what we're talking about. We're talking about a disciplined approach to sharpen our vision, our goals, right, our objectives for thriving. And for too long, we've been satisfied with survival. Quite frankly, especially when you start talking about the diverse range of marginalized cultures in society, Black cultures, indigenous cultures, generally Latinx communities of diverse sexual orientation, survival has become an identity. That is not the fullness of who we are as human beings. And I invite you to reject that today so that we move forward as a fuller representation of who we are. Like I said, the ancestors who were instructing us to know ourselves would not support us identifying a minimalist expression of our full humanity. Instead, they are encouraging us to test our power. And I want to offer you the themes based upon what I've tried that has been most promising for me. So focusing on self first, then others is one of those rules, right? Developing that discipline around expanding self-awareness and lifelong learning is what I'm referring to. So that requires taking time to identify my personal values, like really setting goals. Y'all ever talked about vision boards and things? Like, yeah, do that every year. Do that every couple of months. Where do you want to be in 2 years? Where do you want to be in 4 years? Where do you want to be in 7 years? The thing about it is, it's not about getting it perfect. It's about developing the habit of imagining what's possible for yourselves and not only operating from what's practical. When we operate from what's practical, we're only operating with the floor and not considering the ceiling of possibilities. And you deserve it. If you don't operate from that set of possibilities, the sky is the limit. If you're not dreaming, then you're not letting your light shine like Fannie Lou Hamer was talking about. And more importantly, you're not honoring your humanity. You're operating from scarcity instead, right? That's what it means to operate from scarcity. Abundance is your birthright. And this society has not socialized us to interact with the abundance that's available and accessible to us if we're willing to shift our mindsets and attitudes to connect with it more fully. So we have to practice this. And we have to do this collectively. That's why going at it alone won't work. That's why going at change with a mindset of shame won't work, or guilt won't work, because you won't allow that part of you that's to be available to other people. And that's the very part that requires healing. We already agreed on that by definition. And so we want to practice patience. We want to practice accountability. We want to practice support and encouragement with ourselves first, so that we become familiar with all of those and can offer it to other people. Because guess what? We consider ourselves leading something or serving others, and we haven't cleaned all of that stuff up, then we're going to be imposing that, projecting that into the relationships that are engaged in those processes that we're charged to lead. Right? So healing is critical. Thriving is the goal. Surviving is important. It got us there, but it is not the end. It's the beginning. All right, so that's one. Two, we want to see things through to fruition. Stick with the process. Adopt a generational commitment to generational change. Meaning appreciate that where we're picking up is where generations before us left off. Right, the Fannie Lou Hammers. I actually believe not only is this another phase in the civil rights movement, but that we're at an inflection point in the history of our country that picks up where Reconstruction left off. The unfinished, unfulfilled promise of Reconstruction continues to cycle itself over and over again, allowing us an opportunity to get it right, and we may have an opportunity to do that if we step into this with a different mindset and a different appetite for change that's connected to a timeline that matches what change requires. Why do I say it like that? Because change is not based upon my individual appetite for it. It's based upon our collective ability to move together. So in other words, it's been said that change happens at the speed of trust, right? We talk a lot about trust-based stuff. Yes, change does happen at the speed of trust. Yes, trust is the currency for change. So everything we do ought to necessarily center the act of building trust. And progress happens at the pace of change. The pace is about how we move collectively from one stage to another. It doesn't matter if I run ahead 5 paces and I'm enjoying prosperity, and I look behind you and the people that I love the most, with whom I'm most interconnected, are suffering. Moving together is how we measure progress, folks. And our institutions have not necessarily embraced that fully, and so it won't always be captured in our evaluation processes. Which leads to my third point. Questioning the premise. It serves us, in addition to focusing on ourselves first and practicing patience, accountability, support, and encouragement, in addition to sticking with processes through fruition and committing to the long game for optimal impact, it serves us to be curious, to stay curious, to ask questions about everything and welcome questions from others, right? In other words, be less certain and more curious. Right? So when someone refers to you as an expert, at least from my point of view, thank you graciously, and I choose not to receive that title. Right? I'm simply expressing the values, the wisdom from across that diaspora of cultural heritages that we all belong to, as well as my direct lineage of ancestors before me. And I've synthesized that into something that is relevant today in a way that as an invitation for us to operate differently, to allow ourselves to be shaped by contemporary variables for change, but protected by the wisdom and knowledge from those generations before us. The protective factors of our ancestors and our cultural backgrounds are always available for us. It's why we can be courageous, folks. We need not worry about harm because collectively we are everything that we need. We are the answers to anything that's revealed through a process of deliberation at any particular point in time. My experience is that whenever we come together with a shared point of view, with a common point of view, a common purpose, a common vision, then what is revealed through the process of deliberation is exactly what the situation or circumstances of that moment require. It has never failed. It is why I'm a CEO today, and I started off from an organizer in the hybrid section of the Bronx 15 years ago, 18 years ago, right? We are miraculous, folks. We are miraculous, and we just don't know it. And we operate from what we know as opposed to allow what we don't know to draw us in. And so I said I would close us out, at least for this portion, with the 5 C's of leadership, right? 5 C's of leadership are courage, competency, compassion, confidence, and care. Courage, competency, compassion, confidence, and care. What does this mean? What I'm referring to here is a quick way for leaders to think about what's required to develop trust from those people who are looking to us for guidance, for support, as a resource to support their own development, right? People are looking for courage because courageous leadership is required to enter into spaces of unknown, of uncertainty, of ambiguity. If we don't know that after the last 2 years, then we haven't been leading. But it's been characterized by uncertainty, by doing things that have never been done before in the same way. So courage is essential. And as I referred to earlier through those 3 themes, our collective genius gives us a broad foundation upon which to draw all of the courage that we need. My experience is that it's only when I depend on my own intellect that I start to entertain self-doubt. When I start to believe the hype of the Western socialization that I refer to, that isolates and separates me as individual, i.e. operating from ego, is when I start to lose courage. And so the most effective leadership then, which is where this first C comes from, is the leader that taps into the collective genius of the constituents or team or community around them. Competency comes from the wisdom, the knowledge, the application of what you learned through experience over time, right? And sharing that in a way that other people can witness and say, that person, I feel confident in this leader, right? I see that this person is moving methodically through, even though I haven't experienced this and I don't know what's going to happen, I trust the process that we're moving through this uncertainty. That's competency. Compassion is about being empathetic. So we got courage, we got competency, compassion. When the people who depend on us appreciate empathy, they see us paying attention to where each one of us may be in our own development, in our own journey, where we may be struggling and needing support, whether we ask for it or not, and we respond to it. Now we've successfully demonstrated compassion in a way that generates trust, right? This is all about generating optimal currency for leading change, folks. Leading change to realize the fullest expression of our aspirational vision for life. Even if it's a part of that is within our profession, our chosen profession, our family lives. I mean, quite frankly, how you do anything is how you do everything. So I could apply this across the board, but I'm trying to simplify it here for time. Confidence, as I mentioned, comes from the witnessing of this. So that means we're not doing this in our little closet and then coming out as the face of perfection that no one feels like they can connect to. It's actually allowing people to see, like, no, we're human too. No, I'm learning too. As a matter of fact, I'm learning with you. As a matter of fact, I'm asking more questions than anybody in the room, but my questions are so strategic and tied to where we want to be that no one else is even thinking to ask them. I'm guiding the conversation. I'm shaping our experience with what I do not know. The thing that some people may feel or express as shame, I see as our pathway forward. The questions, your curiosity is what we need, because then it contributes to our collective creativity. And care is that last point, and I'm going to invite you in, Brian and Michael. Care, we have found, and all of this is supported by research. For those of you who know Rockwood Leadership Institute, they really advance these C's, and I've worked very closely with them as an executive coach, as a leader in the spaces in philanthropy around equity and advancing change. But the latest research has shown that the next generation of leaders are saying, I won't even give you that opportunity to demonstrate courage, competency, to show compassion, or generate confidence if I don't see care. If you're not showing me that you care about my well-being, if you're not showing me that you care about me being held, heard, and seen through each aspect of my work experience, then you don't get the opportunity to go forward. And so the most effective leaders consider all of these as real-time functioning that are constantly feeding and activating courage, competency, compassion, confidence, and care. So just as a brief intro, thank you so much. I hope this is there was something in that was meaningful for you. I'm so eager to respond to some questions and get into this dialogue. Please activate those chats. I can talk and respond to the chat and look at the faces in the room and do all the other things. Let the tears flow, but see this as that opportunity to really ask the questions that perhaps you haven't felt were welcome in other spaces in the same way. I am here for you in whatever way I can be a resource. Thank you.
Marcus, I think I can safely say I'm not the only one who feels like their soul is soaring right now. just amazing upliftment. We do want to invite all of our guests to step forward, to respond, to engage. You can either respond and engage in the chat or here verbally with us now.
Maybe to warm us up, Mike. Oh, Yolanda?
Hi.
Yes. Good to see you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Marcus, for those words. Very, very powerful. If we were in church, I'd be at the altar ready to join. But you know, something that you brought up that I'm also sort of cross-referencing with something that Karen shared in her speech. Karen, I remember you saying, and it struck me that there was a time where you didn't know if you wanted to go to that next level.
Yep.
And and I think that there is like there might be a couple of us, a handful maybe, who've seen how leadership is operated in the past and see the damage that has been done and what is required to take the steps necessary for our generation. And a lot of us are already sort of burned out from the journey thus far.
Yeah.
And the fighting thus far, and the not being heard and not being seen, and
yes.
or to being overly seen and overly, burdened, right? And just sort of like sort of being mishandled by the culture, right? That doesn't know what the direction is and that hasn't given us the space yet to lead, right?
Yes.
And so I guess the question for you is like, how do you, how
Yes.
how
How? I love it.
how do
Thank
we
you.
get to that place? Yeah.
Yes. You modeled exactly what I invited us to consider. You had a feeling, you were compelled to say something, weren't quite sure how to say it, but you asked a question. I felt you. I get what you wanted to convey, whether the words can actually convey it adequately or not. So let me just honor the request around how. I just like how? What? Like what? Listen. One, the invitation is for us to give ourselves permission to be human. I invite everyone on this call to allow yourself permission to be human. That means don't set an expectation because you've acquired some information, you developed some intellect that's different and above what is typical for, let's say, average citizen. Allow yourself to still be just like that person. To wonder, what's it gonna take? How do we need to be? What's missing? Why do we keep having the same experiences over and over again generationally? Because I'll tell you this, Yolanda, and shout out to Karen. I was loving that. Karen, where you at? We could have kept going with that thing. Let me tell you. You remember when I talked about us all moving together? Right now, Yolanda, let me tell you what my colleagues are doing. We're making salaries that are 6-figure and above, high 6-figure. We're saying, whew, I no longer have to be in the Bronx. Within those communities that are not defined by choice. And now I want to know what it's like to be at the helm. So we don't really care. This is just, please don't receive this as flippant as it may sound. But there's a part of us that's not really interested in the values that we're espousing as much as we want to be the ones that are benefiting from the inequity, not them. When is it my turn? Yolanda, I'm offering that's more what I'm experiencing than we fought so hard to make change in a particular area, and it's just something that's so mysterious and intractable about that area of change that we keep failing. No, we're not getting there together. There's not a culture, for example, even within advocacy spaces, I can say this firsthand, that's based upon collaboration. And quite frankly, we get into the spaces where finally we have organized strategies. We've taken the long view. We've done so many of the things that I've described. We get to the table and we're afraid of power. We're unfamiliar with exercising power. And so then we retreat to an advocacy position when the table is for negotiation. So guess what? That's not the individual's fault who is referring to their default way of being. It's more of an indicator of how far we progressed at operating from a collective that's based upon thriving and a shared vision for thriving. And so leaders of color, we have a particular frame of reference for what it's like to depend on each other, whether we have wanted to or not. But guess what? There's purpose in that. The world has never seen a group of leaders this large, dare I say a critical mass of leaders with this much education, this much access, this much power, who are equipped to step into the roles and change the culture based upon our values, purpose, and vision. We have some work to do, Yolanda, around our healing, in other words, and then around what it takes for us to work together in ways that are generative and not competitive. Diversity contributed to competition between people of diverse backgrounds to be empowered. That's different than equity. Equity is a game changer where we eliminate that racial hierarchy and not just try to be the one that's on top of it.
Yeah.
How we are. How means let's pay attention to how we show up as leaders. Are we inviting in, or are we calling out and creating separation?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh. Whew. Yeah, where's my heart button? Thank you. I can't see the screen here, but what I do know is that I have someone that follows me, and I would be the biggest hypocrite in the world if I didn't honor the time that's allotted for that next person. And so if no one else has any questions, what I'll do is say, please reach out, connect to Brian and Michael if something that I said resonated with you and you want to hear a little more. Maybe there's a resource that you want to tap to. A lot of what I did was introduce what a very experienced leadership coach that's grounded in racial equity values would offer to you. And so I can talk for days about that, but this is not about talking, and I hope that's one of the things that you really take away here. This is about how we show up for each other, but particularly for ourselves first, in order to be in a way that is more aligned with us, to achieve a more fulfilling and meaningful experience. Folks, our sector is the only one that exists that's centered on joy. Joy for the collective human experience. And so if anything that we're doing is not producing results that align with that, then we're doing something that is misaligned. It is not mission aligned. And so thank you so much. I've been benefited from this as much as anyone here. Humbly, thank you for the invitation.
Maybe I'll just unmute and just give a big round of applause, both to Marcus and also to Yolanda, for modeling the exercise of freedom, of courage, of leadership in real time for us. That was really beautiful to experience. And again, I know I speak for the entire group when I say ashe and thank you to all of you.